Powers from Cointelegraph to come up here and moderate a panel with educated gentlemen about NFTs and their legalities. So please welcome to the stage Marc Powers, Scott Shipman, Joshua Hale, and Dave Rodman.
Got it. Thank you so much. Hey, everyone. You probably could hear me without this. Maybe we'll get a few more people here in a moment. Come on, have a seat, guys. All right, let's sit down. So, how many of you own NFTs? Do we own? All right, cool. How many of you are involved with the DeFi? Okay, very good. All right, cool. So, hey, good morning. Yeah, good to see you. So what you want to do is you want to kind of say to yourself, okay, I'm in this space, I'm buying this stuff, I'm thinking of putting on my own startups in this space. You have a panel here of group of people that are going to explain to you how you set it up if you want to, what the legal issues are, and how you can make sure that you get to keep whatever you have, right? Because the last thing you want is do something where all of a sudden you're going to lose all your time and effort doing things. And there are some legal guideposts that you need to pay attention to. So for example, I don't know if you guys saw, but Quentin Tarantino was about to try, and he has 7 scenes from Pulp Fiction, right? You guys know Pulp Fiction, right? That had not made it into the movie. So he was going to go and create these NFTs, right? And sell them. Well, guess what? Miramax, who was his partner for many years, goes, wait a second, Quentin, we love you. But I'm not sure you own those rights, and why didn't you talk to us about this? And he's basically said, I'm going to do this anyway, and guess what they did? They sued him. And he's being sued in federal court in California, Miramax, because he's trying to sell his NFTs, and they're suing him for copyright infringement, unfair competition, trademark infringement, and he's going to have to deal with those issues, right? So that's why you have these lawyers here to kind of talk about these cases and talk to you a little bit about what you kind of want to be sensitive to. Doesn't mean what you're doing here is a problem. Doesn't mean what you're doing here is, oh my God, I don't want to deal with the government because we're in DCentral land. But at least to give you open your eyes to go into these kind of players up here to kind of maybe ask the right questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it first over to Scott, who to introduce himself, 1 or 2 minutes, and then we're going to do some questions. So go ahead, Scott, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Scott Shipman, I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Dapper Labs, home of NBA Top Shot, and a bunch of other amazing properties coming your way, and the originators of the CryptoKitties. My specialty is essentially everything and anything as it relates to blockchain, crypto, and NFTs, and I'm looking forward to speaking on the panel.
Great, thanks so much. To my left, I have Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh Hale. I'm an attorney in California. I've been practicing for about 15 years. I've worked with startups mostly that whole time. I've done a couple other type of areas of law, but done a lot of work with startups and small family businesses, that sort of thing. And got into crypto with a company I was working with because it's what they wanted to do, and basically, got fed to the wolves and just had to learn it. Ultimately, I'm an attorney for several companies in the crypto space, and at this point in time, I'm also representing a company that is doing a video game metaverse project called One Up Gaming that allows assets from one game to be used in other games. And that's who I am and what I'm doing.
Great, thanks so much, Josh. Dave?
Thanks, Marc. Dave Rodman, the managing partner of the Rodman Law Group. We've been in the blockchain crypto space since late 2016. So we advise people up through the bull market of late 2017. We weathered the ensuing winter, and we continue to grow in the space. It's our second biggest practice area, but very small amount. Cannabis still is our largest practice area, but it's all that I do at the moment. My background is in securities and intellectual property law, which was already a good fit for crypto, but as NFTs started to take off, I found that there was no more perfect meat of legal ability and interest. So we represent a bunch of projects in the space, Nameless, NFT42, Charged Particles, some people who are doing some very cool things with this tech, and I think we're just getting started. But there are a lot of legal pitfalls, which is what we're going to speak about.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. And so apart from writing a monthly column for Cointelegraph, I retired from law practice last December. And so I also...
which makes him the smartest one up here, by the way.
So, yeah, right. So, because I've been in the space since 2017, both investing as well as representing clients in the space. And I previously was ran a securities practice, hedge fund industry practice for some major firms. But the cool thing I'm getting to do now is I'm teaching at Florida International University Law School to law students. Because the worst thing in the world is to go to a lawyer, unlike the gentleman up here, but go to a lawyer that doesn't know squat about what you're talking about, right? And so I'm hoping to educate, at least on piece by piece, the law students so that they kind of get up to speed on blockchain, NFTs, and this entire technology, which I think in finance in particular. So with that, I want to turn first to you, Scott, if I may. What is an NFT in terms of the rights that are granted, and how do you go about doing so?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So if you think of an NFT as a digitally authenticated item, it can be anything, right? It could be the Mona Lisa. It could be a LeBron James crazy dunk, right? Any digital item can be an NFT. What makes it an NFT is that it is digitally encrypted on a blockchain ledger, and so that therefore those properties are immutable. So you have proof of ownership, proof of authenticity. When you think about that in a digital collectible space, or even a physical collectible space, proof of authenticity is what makes something valuable. It's what makes something unique to the person that's holding it. Now, I'm not a LeBron James fan, so a LeBron James moment for me doesn't mean that much. But to someone else, getting serial number 23, LeBron James, means everything. And so it's that authenticity and proof of ownership. Anybody can look on the blockchain and see that you own it. People can't fake it, right? So when you think of eBay, or you think of some of the early online marketplaces with collectibles like Beanie Babies, is it authentic? Is it fake? How do we know? Well, there's certificates of authenticity. Well, an NFT for a digital object is that certificate of authenticity, but better yet, rather than it being on a piece of paper that could also be forged, it's on a digital ledger on the blockchain that can't be forged.
Well, Scott, apart from maybe being the owner of it, to be able to say that you own it, do you have any other rights attached to it? Do you have the right to license it out on your own and the like?
Yeah, and so with NFTs, the other thing you have to think about, if you're a creator, if you want to create an NFT, do you own the rights to the content that did you draw a little picture on a napkin and turn that into a digital NFT? Well, then you own that right? You own all of that copyright, that art that you've created on a napkin. Conversely, if I were to take an image that's been created by someone else, I don't own those rights. So if I turn that into an NFT, like your example, Mr. Tarantino's got himself in some trouble, right? Because he took something that wasn't his and turned it into an NFT. So when you're buying an NFT, you want to ask yourself, who am I buying this from? Are they reputable? Is this licensed from the NBA? Is this licensed from the NFL? Well, if so, those are obviously reputable organizations doing business with people that are also reputable. But when you're buying something and you don't know who's created it, that's when you want to think about, what am I buying here? Is this real? Or has somebody just taken a picture of something and thrown it up on the blockchain? And so it's those rights, like any copyright, that you want to inquire about. And so, for example, with a Top Shot, you own the license to that unique object forever for personal use. Now, if you turn around and commercialize that, that would be in violation of the license. But for personal use, just like collecting a baseball card or having a collection of anything, you can buy it, sell it, trade it, do whatever you like with it. You just can't commercialize that use, right? And so most NFTs you'll see are going to be for personal use because it's licensed content. What makes certain NFTs more rare is if it's a one of one, right? It is the only one, and someone is not licensing the rights to you, but they're actually selling the entire work of art to you, authenticated through the blockchain as a digital NFT.
And that kind of gets actually to a, hopefully not too esoteric legal issue, right, that Scott's hitting on, because so there's a lawsuit that's been brought not against the NBA, but actually just against Dapper Labs, right, for class action claiming it's a security. So I suspect what Scott is saying is it really does depend what the rights are you're getting. And maybe it's because you're not getting the licensing or commercialization rights and you're really getting it for the value as a collectible, as a piece of art on a marketplace. That's why it's not a security, even though there's a class action claiming that it is. And let me turn, then, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but did I kind of get it a little bit on what the argument's there?
I mean, the subjective value of a collectible is inherently what makes it a collectible and not a security.
Yeah. So Dave, why don't you take us through those kind of issues then? So what are the IP issues involved in these situations?
So, I mean, I think it depends on whether you're talking about what perspective we're talking about. Are you talking about it from the creator's perspective, from the marketplace's perspective, from the purchaser's perspective? I think the most important thing as a creator is, as Scott alluded to, is to make sure you have the rights to mint or to make your NFT. But what does that mean? That means having a copyright. You get a copyright the moment you take an idea and you fix it in a tangible medium of expression. But you don't actually have the registered right until you register it with the US Copyright Office. And in order to protect your rights, you have to have a registration. And if you register within 3 months of making your thing, the idea that has been fixed in a tangible medium of expression, you have a presumption of ownership. And that helps you to, when you have to go to court and defend yourself and defend your right. You also can get trademark protection, but that's more for if you're looking at it from like a marketplace standpoint. You know, OpenSea's little icon protecting things with the USPTO, which is sort of an indication of goods and services and being reputable to consumers. But the important thing is that there are significant penalties if you violate copyright, if you violate trademarks, and so when you mint something and it stays on a blockchain forever, and you haven't gotten that, you don't have that right, I mean, you are opening yourself up to endless, repeated amounts of violations. And each instance, in some cases, can be a $2 million fine if you have ill intent, and that's specifically for trademarks. So,
what's a free use doctrine? And how does that play?
The fair use doctrine?
Fair use doctrine, yeah. How does that play into the creation, for the creator of art?
So that's we have 15 minutes left, and that's a very, very complex topic. But broadly,
you got 45 seconds.
There are some exceptions to this. Fair use being if for educational purposes, if you have a piece of art that comments on something, like as in satire, or otherwise changes the material underlying original piece. So commentary, satire, education, those are the traditional fair use exemptions, but like that's not really applicable if you're making something to then sell it, unless you significantly change the underlying image, sticking with art for a moment, so that your new image provides commentary on the original image. That's more or less the exemption.
Okay, so before I turn it over to go to Josh, let me ask you one other thing relating to the securities laws,
Sure.
right? So now to take the example, let's assume instead of a marketplace wanting to sell a digital piece of artwork that you can then own and say you possess on a blockchain, you decide as the artist you're going to do 1,000 of them, or you're going to sell 1,000 portions of this because you want to make it $1 million item, but you're going to then sell it, for $10,000 each.
So I think what you're describing is fractionalization.
Yep.
So fractionalization is hot in the industry right now. It is, I think, it's my opinion, I think most securities lawyers' opinion, that fractionalization absolutely constitutes the sale of securities. You have something that is unique, an ERC 720 token, for example, and then you fractionalize it into a fungible token, ERC 20, and you sell those or you pool money together. That is a classic violation of the Howey test. The Pleaser DAO is a great example of having done something that was risky recently. I won't go too far into it because we represent some of the members there, but there are severe consequences that people are not thinking about, and I want to stress that, one, we're talking about an immutable ledger, so this stuff's going to be easily referenced with chain analysis for years, and two, the look-back requirement for securities laws can be up to 14 years. So put those two things together, and things that are happening right now may not actually get people in trouble for 5, 10 years from now, but people will get in trouble because the SEC does not fuck around.
Okay, so we've used the F word. Let's turn to Josh. No
filter.
Tell us about other possible use cases of NFTs.
So exactly what he's talking about with securities, as far as I'm concerned, those are the things that are going to make NFTs really, really interesting, is when we have some direction on the idea of, hey, you can do this and it is or is not a security based off of this state, that state, federal law, this country, whatever. Ultimately, that is a use case that I find very interesting, because the idea of NFTs allows for this immutable thing to basically be yours forever or to sell it. And what you were talking about before with the idea of commercialization, you can commercialize something, the first sale. That's like buying a t-shirt and reselling it. You just can't have other rights. So the other idea that's very interesting for interesting use cases is the idea of being able to build additional things into NFTs and into even blockchain that allow you to do new and interesting things with them. That's the idea of like crypto Kongs right now, where it's doing 10 bananas a day by owning a crypto Kong. There's other things that are going to be coming down the pipeline that are for use cases super interesting, but there's going to be guys like the three of us up here that are saying, that may not be copacetic in this jurisdiction. It's super interesting, but it may not be okay. So, for purposes of law, you have to be very careful to make sure that you're thinking about not only is this interesting and a project worth doing, but now what jurisdictions can I do this project in without, going to prison? And that's, I don't want to go to prison. I assume most of you here also don't. So
let me turn this to you, Scott. So what are the kinds of other things that Dapper Lab's doing, potentially in this space? And what other things you're thinking about, for NFTs?
Yeah, so
it's on the Flow network, right? Is that what it is, the blockchain?
So Dapper is on the Flow network, probably one of the fastest, greenest, most decentralized blockchains there is. It's largely been used by Dapper and Dapper Studios. It's starting to get a lot of third-party traction right now. One of the things that I think is very interesting is when you think about the capabilities of what an NFT does, right? It authenticates, it's on an immutable ledger. What are the other things in our society that we see where proof of ownership is very important? Your automobile registration, your pink slips, your title to your home, right? There are lots of things where proof of ownership is incredibly valuable. Your college diploma, how do we know it's yours, right? Your high school diploma, your nursery school graduation certificate, whatever it might have been, right? So wherever you have proof of ownership, wherever you have a need for authenticity, there are a number of projects looking at how do we tie designer physical goods where there's massive challenges with authentication and authenticity. So how do we tie designer items? How do we tie experiences? And this is something that Dapper is looking into. How do we tie experiences I have the starting lineup as NFTs for the Warriors tonight, and I get to the Chase Center early, I present that I have the starting lineup as Moments, and guess what? I get to go play horse with Steph Curry. So combining the offline and the online worlds together through that proof of authenticity, proof of ownership. There's one other comment that I wanted to make with fractalization, which is if I'm an artist and I want to make prints of an artwork that I've created, I want to make 250, and we've all gone to the art fairs or Art Basel, right? And it's 1 of 10, 2 of 10, 3 of 10. That's not fractionalization, right? You're allowed to create multiple copies of things and sell them because each serial or each item may have its own unique value to people, right? Number 1 may be more valuable than number 250. What I think we were talking about is where people pool money, create a common share or a common interest in something. That's where you start to get closer to securities concerns.
Right, like now they're doing security tokens where you can buy a piece of artwork, a Monet, because no one can afford a Monet, so everybody gets a piece of it. And that's generally considered like an offering of some sort of securities offering.
Well, yeah, I mean, like they actually do file the proper stuff with the SEC. Masterworks is classic for that. But in the non-permissioned world, just clubbing money together and buying an asset and fractionalizing it. It's a classic example of the Howey test. An investment contract, which makes it a security.
Right. But Josh, what else? What do you want to see NFTs be doing? What other use cases do you see there?
One of the most interesting use cases I see for NFTs in something that is starting to happen. We talked about it the other day about the idea of using NFTs for proof of ownership of things like real estate. That's really interesting and really cool, right? The problem with NFTs for proof of real estate is what happens when I, Josh, buy a house from Dave and I did it with $100,000 of fake money, but it was an NFT that got transferred to me based off of that purchase. Well, there's no easy way to pull that back, and the states are not going to allow that fraud to happen. Even, it's really hard, for example, for somebody to do it, through a transaction on their MetaMask. So what a state's going to do is they're going to work the old archaic system of titles and deed searches and all of that if and when this happens. And they're going to say, yeah, you can transfer ownership with the NFT, but it's going to go through a trust, then it's going to go through a title, and ultimately this NFT is a NFT that is for the benefit of the trust and vice versa. And that gets really interesting because now what happens when there's a fraud? The state can cancel the NFT as being the trust, the beneficiary of the trust. And that's something that hasn't happened yet. It's not something that's on the books anywhere, but how cool would that be? That's next level for legal, in my opinion. It's something that's going to happen sooner rather than later, and ultimately it's going to be a jurisdiction, if for the United States purposes, probably going to be one of the states that say, hey, let's do this. And it may not be copacetic by federal standards, but, that happens in marijuana too.
I think Cook County right now is actually doing it. They're doing an experimental program to allow blockchain generally to be used for recording the real estate transactions. So I think that is a really cool way that can go. Dave, let me ask you, what advice would you give to people that are either looking to make an investment, to pick up a little bit on Josh's point, to protect themselves, to make sure that what they're doing or what they're buying either is what they expect? Leave it at that.
Well, first, this is not investment advice, and none of us are your lawyers, and this is not legal advice, so we should get that out of the way. But as far as what should people kind of consider, I think it's easier for me to sort of advise the marketplaces, because that's who our clients are, marketplaces and projects. So if you are a marketplace, being able to comply with the DMCA, be able to take down images that are violating copyright. The big kind of monster in the room that no one likes to talk about, but it's going to become an issue, I can guarantee it, is child porn, when you get stuff like that put onto chains like Arweave, and there are some stuff that it's in place to try to mitigate that from happening, but that's up there forever. And so I have nightmares about people on Capitol Hill using the fear of child pornography to come after the NFT space. And believe me, it can happen. So these marketplaces need to have a method to deal with that, which is a little bit antithetical to what we all kind of think of as far as censorship and this being non-censorable. But there are certain things that society has decided that just aren't acceptable, and I sincerely hope that our space can figure out how to navigate this. I don't have a specific solution because I'm not a tech guy, but like legally I can say the ability to have a way to make sure that you comply with that kind of law is going to be essential. Also, everybody, you should all trademark your projects. Like that's one of the first things you should do. File a trademark, preempt other people in the class. I've had clients who've gotten well down the road on a development and had to change their token name or their project name because they didn't bother to check to see if someone else had that name in that class of services. I guess from a creator standpoint, as I said earlier, just make sure that you own your own IP.
That's great. Same question for you, Josh. What would you say?
I was so interested in what he was saying. I don't remember the question.
Well, it's just really what final words of wisdom do you want to give to the group here?
I would say develop cool things and hire an attorney like Dave to guide you to determine whether or not that is something that you can do with the ideas that you have, or in the alternative, if you can't do it in the United States, is there a better way to do it elsewhere? You know, just because we have a set of laws here in Miami doesn't mean that those laws are those laws everywhere. And there are times where offshoring is the best solution for a project.
Good point.
Amen.
If I may, then turn to you.
Yeah, I'd say as a creator, there's no shortcut, right? You know, when you've created something, you know whether it's magical or not. And when you've got that, then that's your opportunity, whether it's an NFT or a digital collectible, whatever it may be. But conversely, if you're a consumer, it's the same test, just in the opposite order. Don't get carried away with a pet rock, so to speak. Look and see what does this mean to me? Is this valuable? Is this an NFT that I want to own? Is this something that I'd be proud of? Is it something that I want to show off? And if it is, then pay what you feel it's worth, right? Because it's worth that to you. And it may not be worth that to someone else. So don't get caught up in a lot of the speculative hype. It's really about what is the value. As artists, there's tremendous value in royalties with NFTs. And so create something that's meaningful for you, not copy someone else's, because all the laws apply. There's no gray zone in the digital world. All the laws that exist in whether the physical world or the copyright world or the patent or trademark world, they all exist in crypto, blockchain, NFT land. And so there's no shortcut. It will catch you, but look for things that are valuable.
Good point. Good final point. We may have time for one question. If anyone has a question for the room? Anyone have a question here? Otherwise, oh, yeah, yes, sir.
So, share with me what the status with the Beeple pieces are as far as it relates to what he put out commercially and everything like that. Because it seems like he's violating all kinds of copyright.
We're not his lawyer, so we're not going to comment. Go ahead.
Sorry, don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah. Go ahead. Do you have a question?
Oh, yeah. Question for you, Dave. What are your thoughts on potential sanctions evasions when it comes to unhosted, non-custodial wallets and decentralization?
So I think that what you're getting at is the Bank Secrecy Act and sort of what FACTA is putting out there, and fundamentally against any kind of regulatory touch as a principle. I think that regardless of my position personally, I think that all national governments have an incentive to try to clamp down on this sort of decentralized economic powerhouse, and I think it's going to be bloody. I think that there are some well-known projects in the space that I won't go into right now that their founders might end up in jail, and it's something that I hope we as an industry can weather. I hope that the lobbying efforts that are taking place right now have an effect. But yeah, I think that we are looking at some very serious pain in the market in the 2 to 4 year timeline. Which is why, to echo, we take people offshore. We just remove them from the board as best we can. It's the safest thing to do if you're in this space.
No more. Any other quick question? No. Well, thank you all, Scott, Josh, Dave, for a fantastic discussion. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, audience.